Aren't you 12? Why are you not solving linear algebra? Why do you want to solve problems of the society? What does it mean to belong? Like, why do I need to give myself into the norms set by people just because they are the majority? Maybe I don't even want to belong. I'm going to do what I want to do. I cannot really be worried about my grades because grades are not in my control. But my studies prior to my exam, how well I know the content, how I perform in my exam, that's totally in my control. So I should not be worried about my grades, but rather I should be worried about what I can do.
Hello everyone and welcome to Irtika. Today we are the pleasure of speaking with Meghna Bora. Through this conversation we'll explore her stories, the questions that have shaped her and some of the experiences that resonate with many young people today. Thank you for joining us Meghna and everyone else wherever you're tuning in from. We're glad to have you here and let's begin.
Irtika, an archive of voices.
So sometimes we come across stories that make us pause and think differently about learning and growth. Today we are joined by Meghna Bora. Her journey has taken her from Assam to UWC Mahindra, where she explored education beyond traditional classroom and became involved in work rooted in community and youth engagement. Along the way, she worked with children through Guzarish Foundation and later built Curentia, a youth-led platform that has connected thousands of students with opportunity, mentorship, and spaces for leadership and collaboration. But beyond these initiatives, Meghna's journey reflects on questions many young people relate to about identity, belonging, purpose, and creating changes while still figuring things out ourselves. Meghna, we are really glad to have you here. My first question to you is that if you had to introduce yourself without mentioning your academics or your professional journey at Tool, who would you say Meghna is? Hi, thank you so much, guys. I'm really excited to be here. Regarding the first question, I actually wrote a LinkedIn post about this pretty recently, and there was like, "Hi, I'm Meghna, and I am someone who like momos. However, I don't like momos anymore. That was just a phase. Now I am so much into prawns, and I'm making prawn momos, which is my own recipe. So yes, I'm Meghna. I love to speak, and I think prawn momos are really cool, and you should try them."
That is very, very interesting, Meghna. So basically, as Chesta was mentioning about your journey, about your projects that you have built, initiatives like Gujaris and Kurentia from ground up. So if someone wanted to understand like what the actual work behind these initiatives look like, the processes, the people who you work, and the like who are you working with, and the challenges, of course. So how would you describe it?
Okay, amazing. I could talk about this for hours. Actually, I started Guzarish when I was 12 years old, and back then I was not like, hey, this is not an organization. COVID was right around the corner, and I was like, I want to be with my friends. I want to do something on social media. All those like cool kids thingies because social media was not something we were allowed to use. So you're like, I mean, that might give me access to Instagram if I view it from a more social perspective, right? So that's how it started. And there's also like a very interesting story where I thought Guzarish meant hope, but later I figured it actually meant request according to some languages. But yeah, I was like, okay, this is a hope for us to make the society a better place. No matter who we are, you could be 12, you could be 13, you could be 5. It's about the intention you have about bringing a change. So we started off as a social media page. We started posting about issues that needed social awareness. For instance, Assam has a big culture of celebrating when someone attends puberty, and not all females like that, right? It's kind of enforced on them. So we talk about that. We spoke about the rape case that happened back then and all of that. So we started off as an online platform and we grew offline. So we would go do donation drives. It could be clothes donation. It could be, just teaching students in the slums. And later during the day, we ended up taking that as our major plan of action where we would go and teach students. And until then, like, we did not really know what exactly we were doing. the concept of non-profit organization or stuff like that. We were just a group of teenagers who wanted to explore and do something good for the society. So that's how Gazarish started, and it was like it should be the hope of everyone that things do get better no matter what happens. And as we grew up and we looked at the structure, the social structure of the society, you asked about challenges, and they were like, aren't you 12? Why are you not solving linear algebra? Why do you want to solve problems of the society? So when we started interacting with people, and it's not like they're random people, they're like people in positions of power who can actually influence so much, and they are like, you are small, get away. So when I experienced that, that's when I realized that maybe it's not just hope, it's also a request from the Gen Z, from the youth who is apparently claimed to be the future of the nation. And you don't really let us work. That's surprising. But yes, it was a request from us to maybe make us involved in the process a little bit more so that we could contribute towards making a change as well. So that was the entire concept of Guzarish. And then I used to participate in a lot of like, you know, summer programs. That's where I met Ananya as well. So I was doing this like ever since I was in ninth, 10th grade. I was in a lot of summer programs, and one thing I really noticed was that the representation of students from Northeast India, the 8 states, was really really less. Like, I'd be the only one. I would see people celebrating, I don't know, Onam and all their stuff. They have this like South Indian collaboration, which is amazing. I go there too, but I would not have someone to be like, yo, you are my Northeastern buddy. I didn't have anyone like that. And when I look deeper into the problem, I think Northeast structurally is deprived of resources, like a lot when I compare it to other, major parts of India, central India, Delhi, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to change that. And I was like, Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you want to be, create greater opportunities. So, and it was my 17th birthday, and it was also like right after my breakup. So I needed something to be busy with, and I was like, okay, this sounds good. So I was like, we are doing this seriously. And I did not expect Querencia to scale up so big, but it did with the grace of God and the support of all the people. And we are teaching 21st century skills like AI literacy, digital literacy, financial literacy to students. We mentored almost 10,000 students in a year, online and offline, in Assam, beyond Assam, in Northeast. We even had cohorts abroad. So all of this happened, and the name Quarentia actually means a place from where you draw your strength. And I strongly believe that place could be you yourself if you have the skills. You don't need to depend on someone else. So I think we achieved or are on the way of achieving that particular goal of making the youth their own strength. So that's how Querentia and Guzarish both are born. And yeah, it's a very big part of myself in a sense. And I just love both of them. Yay.
All right, thank you so much. It was really lovely listening to you and the passion you have about the work you're doing. So, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is that there are many talented students who have a marginalized or underrepresented backgrounds who also work like really, really hard. Yeah, but only a few of them are able to translate that hard work or potential into something that is visible or into greater networks or opportunities. And you yourself come from a marginalized region, right? But you were able to channel that exclusion into something meaningful. So, looking back at your own journey, what do you think genuinely made that difference for you? And what do you believe are the essential factors which in a student's life can make the difference for us between having the potential, being, ambitious, but actually having the opportunities to do it?
That's a really insightful and thoughtful question, I'd say. And the first thing everyone needs to and remember that you are the only person who could kill your dreams. I mean, your parents might not be supportive, the society might not be supportive, but as long as you do not give up, it's not over. A personal example was right after I passed 10th grade. I gave a lot of interviews. I was at the final stage of getting a 52 lakh scholarship to pursue my 11th and 12th in Singapore. The person who gave birth to me, she did not let me attend the interviews, and she kept me back in Assam. and I was pushed into this JEE NEET race and all of that. So essentially, the grade IB dream was finished there itself, and it was not supposed to happen. But I tried again in 11th grade when I realized that JE or NEET is not where I want to be. Then I tried for UWC, I got in, and this time I was very certain that okay, this might sound rebellious, but I was like, you either let me go at your own will or I'm running away. And they knew that I had the complete potential to run away. If I wanted to run away, I would, because I was making my own money, I was doing my own stuff. So they were like, okay, we'll let you go, don't run away. Now I'm not saying that threaten your parents to run away all the time, but you need to build yourself up to an extent where you know that you're capable of achieving things without anyone's support. I know you're 15, you're 16, you're a child, you are dependent on your parents, but the earlier you start being dependent on yourself is the less people intervene into your decisions, and your decisions are your decisions and not someone else's. Your expectations are your expectations from yourself and not someone else's. So if you want to pursue that one dream, no matter how silly it is, first of all, ask yourself if you could trust yourself with that dream if you have no one else to support you. And if the answer is yes, I'm sure you are gonna be great in doing that. And it's basic human psychology, like when someone knows that they are not really gambling on you, when they're certain that you're gonna achieve what you're gonna achieve, they don't really stop you. Like the problem with, I would say, Indian society or Indian parents is the fact that they do not want to let their child experiment because they are not really prepared to, handle the failures. Like even for us, how many of us were taught to handle failures? Like I remember I was coming back in seventh grade after my finals results because I just got 98%. I was like, just 98%, and I was crying the whole way back because they were like, hey, how dare you? Like, you know, we are never taught to handle failures. So we need to, failures are the pillars of success. Failures are the pillars of success. It's not just a t-shirt code. You need to live it. You need to be the most confident on yourself. Be delusional, dare to dream, and achieve it by hook or by crook. The only thing you need to make sure is that if you are taking a challenge like that where the society or your parents are not supporting you, you need to make sure that you're not messing up. You have to be completely responsible with your own decisions. So as long as you know that you are going to do what you are going to do, just go do it. And I'm sure as people see your progress, they don't really like stop you, they will let you do it just because you can. And in terms of like highlighting marginalized areas or underprivileged areas, the thing is, even India, if you see from a very like study abroad perspective, with our great population, with our we all know what's happening to NEET or CBSE or other government education. So if I see from that education perspective, I think India as a whole itself is marginalized, is underprivileged, and unfortunately you have to be more pragmatic and a little pessimistic at times, and be ready that if that is the worst that's going to happen, I'm going to make the worst my best. Have a plan A, have a plan B, have a plan C, have as many plans as you want to. If this is not working out, this is going to work out, and the thing that is working out is the thing that will convert to your best. So it is all in your hands, honestly. I know it sounds pretty delusional because you're like, structurally it's not allowed, my parents are going to stop me, blah blah blah, but you are the only person who could make yourself grow, and you are the only person who could actually kill your dreams. So if you really really want to do something, no matter where you come from, no matter how many challenges you have, fight for it, because honestly life is too short. Like with all this climate change, with all this pollution, with all this food, we all are dying by like 40, 45. So I mean, like, it's fine, mess up, experiment, lose 1 2 years, it's okay, but it's better to fail than to regret later on. So if you want to do something, go for it. Just be confident that you're not messing up. I mean, it's contradictory when I say you have to fail but you have to mess up, but you need to know how to balance both of them.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. Shrishta?
Yeah, I think the thing you that you have mentioned before, like there's one thing I've seen a lot of people struggle with is that like the starting often feels the hardest part. Like a lot of students have so many ideas and like frustration about problem they see around them, but like very few actually take step because like they cannot find the courage to just go out. And like you started working on social impact initiative at a like very young age, as I told you, about 12 when you started it. So like how did you build up that courage to just go out and do it? And like what exactly was your first step, like your initial day looked like? And like what would you say to students who like are afraid of to take the first step and like build up that courage?
Okay, I'm loving the questions you guys are bringing in. Absolutely. Okay, I have two things I really keep in mind. First is what's the worst that could happen? You started a initiative, it fails. That's it. Like, it's not taking away your food, your water, your house, your friends, nothing. You literally have nothing to lose. So give it a shot. Just try. Be delusional, be ambitious, do whatever you want to do. If you fail, you fail, right? And secondly, one of my teachers back at UWC had taught me this is the fact that you should only focus on things that are in your control. For instance, if I'm worried about my grades, I cannot really be worried about my grades because grades are not in my control. But my studies prior to my exam, how well I know the content, how I perform in my exam, that's totally in my control. So I should not be worried about my grades, but rather I should be worried about what I can do. So when you are like trying to solve a social issue, you should worry about controlling what's in your control. For instance, I could protest about a rape case, but I cannot really stop a rape case. I cannot really, people are getting bail left and right. I cannot really make that bail stop. I cannot change the constitution and all of that. What is in my control is spreading awareness. I could teach students self defense so that they could run away. That's in my control. I could teach students that, hey, if something wrong happened to you, it is not your fault. It is someone else's fault. I could impact their mindset. That is in my control. So, sometimes it's really hard to distinguish what's in our control, what is not in our control. And we need to figure out what is in our control and figure that out and, just focus on that. I know as I said two, but I have a bonus point that I just remembered. Yay. It's the fact that you need to start asking, so what? You know, your teachers are not supporting your initiative. So what? Nothing. I mean, your teachers hate you. What then? Okay, they hate you for doing a social initiative. What then? So every time something happens, question yourself, so what? If you have an answer to your so what, most of the times you do not have it, which makes you realize how irrelevant of an issue that is and how we should not care about it. But by any chance, if you have an answer to so what, ask yourself, what then? you know and at least for me, most of the times I do not have an answer to both of the questions, and then I'm like, hey, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Let's just let it slide. So remember to ask yourself, so what and what then. Remember to only control things that are in your control. And finally, the last point is, what was the first thing I said? I remember. Don't help me, guys. Wait. Okay, quiz time. What was the first thing I said?
Yeah, it's okay. You can just continue how like where you were going.
Yeah,
I
just
yeah.
after this part, it's chill. Yes, I remember. What's the worst that could happen? I forgot. What's the worst that could happen? Nothing. That's it. It's fine.
So yeah, Meghna, there's one thing that I've been meaning to ask you. I mean, you were just 12 years old. I mean, most of us when we're 12 years old, our parents don't even let us go alone to the park, right? And how did you convince your parents about what are you doing, or what is this thing? Why are you doing it? And eventually, how long did it take for them to, support you, be supportive?
One good thing is like my father is really, really, really supportive. For Indian parents, it's like if, for instance, two kids have a fight, right? most Indian parents are like, my child is at fault. Like they would not even analyze the situation, but they would like blame the entire thing on their kid. But for me, it was like kind of the opposite. Of course, my dad is gonna like bring me back home and talk to me that, hey, what you did is not right. But if it's the public, he would be there for me no matter what. And this is one thing that I think kind of gave me the confidence to do whatever I wanted to do, because I knew I had the cushion to fall. Like I can fall, I can fail, and I would have someone who would be waiting for me. It's like really sweet, I think. I mean, he's really really sweet in the sense like, oh, shout out to my daddy, he's a businessman, he's pretty busy. But whenever I'm back home, when I wake up, I do not have to put my phones on charge. He does that for me. I get my breakfast near my bed. He's so mindful about the small things, like, I have to get a charger for which I need an extension cord. He has like a lot of clothes above that wire so that I don't trip and fall. So in the sense, like, he's very mindful, he's very sweet, and it's really cute like that. So my father is my greatest support. I have zero contacts with my mother. We separated ways in 2023, and I'm really really grateful we separated ways. And it's like, this is why I believe everything happens for a good reason. But she was very toxic. She is very toxic. um all the years I was with her, to like make her agree to let me do things, was like, it was like a transaction where if I have good grades, I can do stuff. So I think it kind of worked out in my favor, because I never really liked studying, but the only reason why I needed to have good grades was that so that I could go out and work on Guzarish or work on Karachia. So I had like pretty good grades, 98, 97, 96. I would not really drop below that. And I'm like, bro, this is my mark sheet. Be happy with it. I'm going. And she's like, yeah, fine.
Yeah, that really does reflect that sometimes you have to take up certain responsibilities to gain certain freedoms, right? You have to do a sort of bargain mostly.
Okay, so I want to ask that, do you think belonging is something we like find or something we slowly create for ourselves in new spaces? And like, how's that for you? Like, you like moved to a completely different region of India. So like, how did that like sense of belonging came to you?
Belonging. Okay. Honestly, I have very conflicted response to that. In a sense, one side of me thinks in a particular way, one side of me thinks in some other way. It's like sometimes I'm like, why do I need to belong? It's not like my work is stopping, it's not like anything bad is happening just because I don't have friends or I don't belong. What does it mean to belong? Like, why do I need to give myself into the norms set by people just because they are the majority? Maybe I don't even want to belong. I'm going to do what I want to do. Right. So that is one part of me where I'm like, hey, I don't want to belong. I'm going to create my own path. And maybe people will join me eventually. And that is the sense of belonging. On the other hand, it's like, I also think, if you think in a more like practical way, for instance, I want to join corporate, for example, and I want to join human resources or consulting and stuff like that. I need to belong to that particular space. Like, I can't just join a job. I can't just start an organization and not have any strings attached to the members whatsoever and be like, you do you, I do myself. And, I can't really do that as well. So I think UWC played a big role, and I'm still confused if I want to belong or if I don't want to belong. But one thing I really realized staying at UWC was your ability to prioritize. You don't need to have a linear attitude. At certain places, you need to belong for your own good. At certain places, you just need to be the lone wolf. And as long as you are happy, as long as it's not hurting you, as long as it is not hurting the people around you, it's chill. So do not really force yourself, do not change yourself. Just because you are the only one walking in a path doesn't mean the path is wrong. Maybe people just have not discovered it yet, which is okay. So sometimes you belong, do not force it, it just happens naturally. For instance, at LGP, I had such a big friend group without even trying. On the other hand, I spent 12 years in a school in Assam. and I used to genuinely spend my lunch break in the teacher's office eating lunch with my teachers. I mean, I don't hate it. It was a pretty good experience because I was like, I had all the tea. I'm superior, guys, and all of that. But yeah, I didn't really have, friends of my age and all of that, which was genuinely fine. I was not sad. I was happy. I was not hurting anyone else. I was not hurting myself. So yeah, I mean, whatever suits you, just do that.
Thank you, Meghna. That was very interesting to know. And what I'm liking most about the spirit that is required to just move forward and just keep working. And just I want to just build on what Chesta said. So you as a girl, moving beyond the familiar environment you grew up in and living in completely new spaces, whether it was UWC and other summer programs you were mentioning, they can be deeply transformative. But we want to know from your own experience, how important do you think it is for young girls to step outside the boundaries they have always known, not just from the perspective of opportunities, but to truly discover themselves, who are they, and just to have their sense of freedom and liberty?
Yeah. If I approach this question just from the perspective of a girl, I think we are pretty uncomfortable with facing the fact that it's 2026 and yet we haven't really achieved equality. I have been at places that preach about, SDGs and all of that, and I have had conflicts with XY chromosomes in that particular place about opportunities for women. So I think patriarchy is ingrained, and one part of it is not really letting girls achieve their full potential. So, I mean, structurally, it's very difficult for a girl, like I can't be like, I want to break the boundaries, so I'm going to come back home at 10 p.m. because I might not come back home if it's 10 p.m., which is sad. But the greatest way to empower yourself and kind of break the boundaries as a girl is literally education. So it's very important. You need to know that your life is your life and your life is not controlled by 20 other people. It might sound bad, but your parents are also dying one day. After that, you are alone. So if you're not satisfied with yourself, I think you are gonna regret it so much. And there's certain things which you can do at a particular age, right? Like I can't join school, I can't join UWC when I'm 45 years old. So if you wanna do something, do not let the factor of being a girl come into the way. I know society might try to impose it to you, and sometimes you need to work through the society. You can't change the whole system. For instance, I can't really wear, the clothes I wear in Pune in Assam, and I have to accept it because I can't change the whole society. But if there are certain things which is, as I mentioned, which does not have the potential of harming you or anyone other than you should totally give it a chance. And especially as a girl, I think, I am not sure about the statistics, but I believe like 11% of the females worldwide have a master's degree, right? The amount of female in STEM, the amount of female in banking, the amount of females enrolled in schools, the gender pay gap, females getting kicked out just because they are on their maternity leaves. Like structurally, females have been oppressed. And it is so normal for us, right? When we say that you should not be out after 7 p.m., we just say it, and we don't really feel how sad that statement is because it's just so normal for us you know so even at you know I don't want to mention names here, but even at like places where we think equality is a big thing, where they preach about equality, I still see women being suppressed just because they are females, and it has been happening throughout. So at certain times you have to fight for it, fight for yourself. At certain times you have to just let it go because it's tough. But at the end of the day, I would say educate yourself, fight for your education. That's the best thing you could do, and you're gonna thank yourself. The society is gonna thank you later on when you're educating yourself. So if you wanna break the boundaries, please study, educate yourself.
Thank you so much, Meghna. Yeah, it's really nice to see how reflective you are of your own experiences and also of the systems that are around us. So there's one thing that I've been thinking about that I wanted to like get your perspective on, which is that Currently these days many youth-led initiatives are rising, and they are also like increasingly getting more visibility as well, right? But at the same time, many of them end up very like numbers driven or performative, where the impact is reduced to just statistics, social media presence, or maybe just the university applications. They're gonna start a project just to show there, and then it's not gonna be there for a long time or for meant for actual or sustainable change, right? So in your work too, there are visible numbers and milestones. Querencia, as I read somewhere, was it says that it reached over 10,000 students in its first year. So I just wanted to know how you personally evaluate and make sure you don't fall into that same trap of just being visible and not actually having meaningful or sustainable change.
I lost your voice for a bit, so I'll just
Uh,
clarify what I understood by the question. It's basically like not falling into the trap of quantifying the impact and how you are making impact sustainable.
Yeah, that, and also it's not just about your social media presence or something that's just visible or for university applications, but actually stays close to its purpose, like of actually bringing change to society and being something that is meaningful.
Okay, this is a good question. And I mean, a lot of people ask me, how did you start and all of that? And every time I am again in my own head with all my questions, because that's so, for me, like when I was 12 years old, I think I was in sixth grade. I had no idea about universities, I had no idea what I was going to do later on. I just started because I wanted to start, right? And for me, it was like it came from within. Now, I could ask someone, how does something come from within? And I don't have an answer to that. Like, I don't have an answer if we start social initiatives. Like, why does someone start a social initiative? What is the incentive for someone to start a social initiative? Why should someone make an impact? Like, I don't have an answer to that. Why should someone make an impact? Or if you look at the structure of the society, can we survive without getting validation from the society? To get funding for Carencia, see, I don't like quantifying impact. I don't like uh taking pictures of students like they are 5 years old. I need to ask for consent, I need to do all the signatures, and it's a long process. So I don't like having a website either for my startup. But can I survive without doing it? When I'm taking part in competitions, a competition that could potentially bring me funding, I need those pictures, I need those numbers. I can't just say I made an impact. They would ask me to quantify it, right? If you're talking about university applications, forget about abroad. Even in India, we say how marks are not everything. But can you get into a university without your marks? Maybe not. So I'm very conflicted even now. I generally don't have answers for this very YouTube podcast. How long will you be motivated to keep producing videos if it's not getting the type of response you are expecting? And the response again is a quantity, it's a quantifiable data. So, and I mean, how selfish or selfless can a human afford to be? Why would a 16, 17-year old try to make a change in the society when they are uncertain of where they are in the society? They don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So what is the incentive for them to work for us, to work for a society that doesn't really even reward them because they are working? Because I think especially in such a densely populated country like India, the first one to look after ourselves should be ourselves. And I don't think it is really wrong to quantify data because it is just a mode of defense. Like, you don't know what to do. But so, like, again, I think one thing that kind of balances life is balance. Just because you're quantifying data doesn't mean you're not making an impact. You're talking about sustainable impact. What does sustainable impact mean? Does it mean I reached out to 10,000 students in 1 year and stopped the project? Or does it mean I work for 10 years to reach out to 100 students? Which one is more sustainable? How do we measure sustainability in terms of impact? Like, actually, what is impact? Impact is a very subjective word. what could be impactful for me might not be impactful for you. And all this subjectivity around us, how do we bring it to a common ground, is basically quantifying that data. So as much as I hate the society, quantifying data, I don't want to be measured in numbers. I don't want to be known as the girl with 20 crores in scholarships. But do I have to do it? Maybe yes. Do I have an alternative? Maybe no. So yes, it's just like having the balance, being true to yourself and having the intention. Know what you are starting something for. Like I had Quarentia, I made money from it, which I invested back to Gusarish. Then I went pro bono. I took breaks in Quarentia when I had to focus on my exams, which would give me my predicted grades for my university. And I don't really think that's selfish, because in order to give back to the society, you need to have that capital. You need to be the human capital. Like, okay, let's be for real. If I did not have my UWC scholarship or my university scholarship, why would someone listen to me? I'm just one of those 1.8 billion Indians yapping on the internet, right? So, in order to make that credibility, sometimes you have to quantify certain aspects of your life. And I think it's fine. Just have the balance. Do not forget your intention. Make an impact. What I really despise is there are a lot of people I know who would like completely fake their extracurriculars. They would make up an organization that does not exist, you know, and they are just like, yeah, I did this and I reached to 30,000 people. I was like, sure, in your dreams. So we should not do that, have an intention, because I'm an agnostic atheist. I do not really know if God exists or not, but I do believe in the concept of karma. So what you give is what comes back to you. So just remember that if you're making a social impact organization, do not fake your stuff, do the work. And at times if you need to like use it, know what you're using it for. If you are at a position, if you're at a position of power in society and you are using that power to do something good for the society, I don't think you used it for the wrong thing, right? So I think it's all right. Like sometimes we just need to, in order to change a system, you have to be at the top of the system. To be at the top of the system, you have to go through the system. And to go through the system, you can't really make the change at the base. You have to be like, you want to do it that way? Fine. Like, okay, maybe I don't really appreciate the entire idea. I'm going to do little tweaks. I'm going to change a little bit, but you have to go through the process. And once you're at the top, whatever you don't like, change it.
Thank you so much,
I
Meghna.
think
So basically, I was curious to know a bit about like how you measure that 10,000 quantity. Like so, in Curentia report, it says that you reached out to and impacted 10,000 students. So just adding on what Ananya and you just mentioned. So what was your like whole like how did you evaluate whether the impact was meaningful and the exact number 10,000? So I was curious about that.
Okay, good question. So we had a lot of offline sessions in schools where we had registration, so we had direct access to data. When you have online sessions, you have Zoom attendance, so you have direct access to that data as well. That was the quantifying aspect of it. The 10,000 was the number. In terms of the qualitative aspect of it, about how it impacted a certain student, I have had a lot of testimonials, from interns, from people who work with us, from people we worked with, in terms of like mentors and mentees. And I mean, see, if I'm reaching out to 10,000 students, I don't think I made a big change into the lives of all 10,000 kids. But even if one kid is coming up to me and they're telling me, hey, I feel much more confident to speak in public, I think that means a lot to me. So, in terms of quantifying it, we had like direct access to data because we had online and offline conferences. People came. One human was one number, and 10,000 humans were 10,000 numbers. In terms of qualitative, it's like the interactions you have, the conversations you have. Sometimes randomly when I'm walking on the road, I have a child coming and hugging me. Although I hate like physical touches, but it's sweet. When someone approaches you and they're like, hey, thank you so much for something you did 2 years ago. And it makes me happy. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I talked about the education initiatives I had through Guzarish, and we did it in a slum. It's a mandir. In front of that we have a slum. I was in Pune for my schooling, right? And when I came back after a year and I went to that slum, I had all the kids running up to me. And it was a year, and I genuinely did not expect them to, remember me. But even after a year, they would see me and they're like, "Hi, Didi, you're back." And they're like running to me. And no, they didn't really speak to me. They didn't really give me cash. They didn't really, tell me you did a great thing. But that small moment of affection is what you are like, okay, maybe what I did was not really bad. And yeah, that was how I would again measure impact. But again, I don't really know what impact is. I do not want to confine myself to the definitions by the Oxford or the Cambridge dictionary. For me, impact is just like an intention executed without really having expectations for yourself. And if the people in front of me are able to see my intent, if they're able to feel the intent, if I'm able to make their, I wouldn't say lives, if I'm able to make their day even like 10% better, okay, maybe that's impact.
I think that surely is an impact. Like connecting human connection is also I see as like the most impactful thing. So like you have said that I volunteered as a leader and I learned by serving in like some of your articles. So what I found particularly interesting in your journey is that your own sense of agency seems to develop alongside your efforts to help other students navigate opportunity themselves. And like a lot of conversation are around student agency like focus on individual ambitions or personal success, like but in your case I think it is deeply tied to community building and enabling others. I think it almost feel as through helping other navigate system, it also helps you understand your own ability to navigate them. So like how like having building up these projects and gain more experience with the system, if you are starting again from scratch today, so like what would you do differently in your whole process?
Right. So, when I was in 11th grade and I was in this JE wala race, and I was like, Papa, what if I don't land in an IIT? And he was like, you can go to the most stupid, zero placement college in this world. But one thing you need to make sure is that when you look back at your journey 2 years back, 10 years back, you should have zero regrets. You should not be like, I could have done something better. And this is one statement from my father I really carry with myself no matter whatever I do. So when I look back at my journey, anything, I wouldn't say there is a single moment I would look back and be like, I did not try hard enough. I do not have a particular time where I would be like, maybe I could have done it better. You know, I genuinely like it the way it is. I have had a lot of lows. I have had a lot of ups. I had gotten a 24 on 45 in my first IBDP exam and all of that. Uh, you know, I have had my fair share of lows as well. But one thing is that I have always revived from that lows, and I did not let that lows be the end of my story. So I don't think I want to change anything, because what my father said is what I take with myself, that no matter I look at my journey, like when I'm on my deathbed, I'm sure there would not be a situation where I would be like, I could have performed better on this. Because if I feel like I could perform better, I'm going to act on it, and I'm going to change it right now so that I do not have regrets in the future. So, yes, I like my journey like the way it is. I'm not changing anything.
I think the audience will also like your journey as well, because like it is not only oriented to projects and organization, but also about impact, about your theory of change. So like I'm curious, like across social media you have built a very strong community of students who support each other with opportunities, scholarships, essays, and applications. So how does that ecosystem function in practice?
Okay, that's amazing. So genuinely, I started writing on LinkedIn for no reason, honestly. And my first post had 0 likes, and I was like, let's stop. But then I wrote my second post and it went viral, and I didn't know how LinkedIn worked at all. Until this day, I look at all this like freelancers who are like, do this to get impressions on LinkedIn, do this, do that. I never researched on how to get impressions anywhere, whether it be LinkedIn or Instagram. You know, it just happens. And I think one core reason is because people can relate. Like on my post on LinkedIn, it's just like I open my LinkedIn app, I type it down and I post it. I have like 200 typing mistakes, I have like 400 grammatical errors and all of that, but people can relate to it. And I think that's how a community is built. Again, what is a community? I don't know. If it's if it's a group of like-minded people, the fact that there is a community is because we have like-mindedness, and it's because it was unfiltered. That's how LinkedIn started. Instagram, I started it, I think, during my IB finals. I was editing reels other than studying because I wanted to be cool, like, what does IB think about itself? Like, I'm not gonna succumb to you. I'm not gonna study for you all the time. I was like, what do I do? Because until like I would say until January of this year, I was really occupied with uni applications and all of that. So I was like, I had stuff to do other than studying. Now I did not have anything. What do I do? And I was so tired of writing essays. I was like, I cannot write on LinkedIn anymore, which is why I stopped. Like I have been pretty inconsistent with LinkedIn lately. And I was like, okay, let me make videos. And I started making videos. I wanted to be an influencer, but in the starting of this year, I was like, I'll post every day for 365 days. I posted for 11 days and I stopped. And it's also funny because on my fourth day, I had the audacity to make a video saying, hey, 4th of January, have you stopped following your resolutions? Because I have not. 7 days forward, I stopped. And I was embarrassed to go back. But I was like, it's fine. So I started making very low effort reels, and it's going well. You know, I barely spent 30 minutes on doing the entire reel thing and posting it. And it's not going that bad. Like, it's literally not going that bad. I mean, I have good amount of comments and blah, 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 which is again quantities. But again, I do have a lot of messages in my DMs where they are like, hey, I am happy that you're doing this. It's not like I don't have hate comments, but yeah, I have that. And that's pretty nice for me. So yeah, I do things because I want to do it, and it ends up going well. Like 90% of the times, it is काम करने जाता हूँ कांद हो जाता है, but the rest of the 10%, it goes pretty well. So that's how I started all my communities. Maybe I want to take it more seriously now because yeah, I can help people out. Sometimes we think things are so simple, but I'm sure I had a counseling session yesterday, and I'm sure there are students in a random part of India who would be so interested in pursuing their studies in India at a liberal arts college, not even abroad, but they do not know what to do. And if I could give 15 minutes of my time and that could, sort out their 4 years of university, why not? Let's do it.
Okay, so Meghna, we're just gonna do a fun activity now. We'll do a rapid fire round. Okay, I just have some questions for you. You have to answer in the shortest way that you can, maybe one word or 2, 3 words, as short as you can. Okay, we'll just go one, 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 and then let's see. We'll just have fun with it. Okay.
Let's
So,
go.
okay, are you ready?
Yes. What's the worst that could happen?
Okay, so one thing you miss most about home when you're outside.
Prawns.
Okay, you really love prawns, huh? Comfort food you can never say no to.
Prawns.
Introvert, extrovert, or somewhere in between.
Depends on who you are.
So I guess somewhere in between.
Mhm.
Okay, a book that has stayed with you for a long time.
It's an Assamese book called Muru Eta Hoponase by Rubul Mouth.
Okay, really good, yeah. So a stereotype about the Northeast or Assam that you wish people in other parts of India or the world would unlearn.
We do not Eat dogs.
Okay, yeah. The hardest part, which was about leading an initiative at such a young age.
Ageism.
Ageism, yeah. Okay, so one thing about you that would surprise most people.
I beat up and broke three hands of three boys.
Okay, that's something most people would actually not even believe, let alone surprised. Okay, so which one do you prefer, essays or interviews?
Interviews.
Okay, one application that has stressed you out the most.
HKU.
Okay, what's the full form of that?
Hong Kong. University of Hong Kong.
Okay, was it like very tough or complex and all?
I wrote like 11 essays for that. I had to make a 5-minute video. I had to write so many essays for that one university. It was horrible.
Okay,
But
so
but it was my dream program. So we got to do what we got to do. It's fine.
okay, so one thing that you wish people had told you when you were 12 years old, one piece of advice.
Um Prawns are better than momos.
I think like half of these answers are about prawns.
I
Okay.
can't help it.
One thing you hope people remember you for beyond your achievements, except prawns.
You took away my answer. Um, I fall all the time when I wear flats. I don't fall when I wear heels.
Okay, that's a really
Pretty
interesting answer.
interesting.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so throughout this conversation, we have talked about identity, community, leadership, and even impact. So now I would like to end up by zooming out a little and reflect on the bigger lessons you have taken from all these experiences. So, in conclusion, through all of your work, building organizations, navigating opportunities, so what have been the biggest lesson that changed you? Think about leadership, impact, or even education itself? And what would be the one thing you want to say to students from marginalized or less privileged backgrounds who may feel capable internally but disconnected from the opportunities and courage needed to move forward? Yeah.
Hmm. I think I would just reiterate or like summarize all the answers I said before this. It's the fact that if you want to do something, do it. As long as it's not hurting you or the people around you, do it. As long as you want to do it, just do it. Nobody can stop you if it's not you. And the biggest lesson I learned is sometimes we do not really take other stakeholders into consideration. For instance, I wanted to make a change, right, through Guzarish, through using education. Initially, I never really bothered to ask the students if education is the thing they wanted. Maybe they wanted something else. So when we are trying to make a change, we see the world from our perspective and not a very holistic perspective. And the people for who you're making a change are often left out of the conversation. So when you're trying to make a change, involve them, ask them if that is what they want, and maybe walk towards what they want. And yeah, I mean, it's contradictory because here it's not do what you want because it's affecting the people around you. So when you have instances like this that has the potential of affecting people around you, that's when you sit down and listen to everyone and take a decision that's rational for you and other people. Otherwise, if you have, you can never be ambitious enough. If you think you can go to Mars in 20 days, who knows, you might, you know so be ambitious, dare to dream, and you should go grab anything and everything you want. At the end of the day, you are alone. Nobody is yours. You are yourselves. So go fight for it. If you want it, fight for it.
All right, thank you so much, Meghna. Thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing your story so openly, so honestly. And I think there's something we can all take away from your reflections and the way you have perceived the world around you and also shaped it. Yeah. So you were not just a passive recipient, you put in that effort to actually go out and change the things that you saw. You actually became the change that you wanted to see in the world. So I think these conversations leave us with a larger message that education is not just about what we learn, but also about who we become throughout that process, right? So I think you are really truly an inspiration and example, and it was great talking to you. So if you have any last things to say, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, yeah, we just thank you for joining. Yeah.
It was really, really nice being here. Um, oh, you're posting this on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, subscribe, click on the bell notification. They're going to be consistent. Like, drop a comment. I'm approachable if you want. Just drop a text and all of that. And all of you got this. And this was one of the most insightful podcasts I have had. I have had other podcasts before, but I really like the way you came up with the questions. And I'm so proud of you guys. As I said, I'm rooting for you. You guys got this. Yes.
Thank you
Oh,
so
thank you.
much.
I think we really needed this kind of like motivation to just go out. I think thank you so much for your support.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. This has been Irtika, an archive of voices. Keep listening and keep growing. Yeah.